Welcome back to the deep dive. We were chatting before we hit record about that local bakery in Enfield that's looking to expand. And it struck me that what they're about to go through, finding the right people for their new shop, is something every business grapples with. So today, we're diving into the world of recruitment and selection.
Absolutely. It's the cornerstone of building a successful team, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've given me a really interesting collection of sources to work with on this one.
Oh, yeah, a lot to unpack. So our mission today is to sort of sift through all of that and really highlight what matters most, like the
Mhm.
fundamental concepts, why they matter, and how it all plays out in the real world. Kind of like offering a roadmap for our listeners who are, building their own teams.
I like that, a roadmap. It's a great way to think about it. So where should we start?
Well, let's begin with the basics, shall we? Recruitment.
Yeah.
What exactly does that term mean in this context?
Okay, so at its core, recruitment is all about finding and attracting potential employees. It's that initial effort a company makes to get the word out there that, hey, we're looking for talented people to join us. Like casting a wide net to see who might be interested in working for the company.
Right, so it's about generating that initial interest, getting people excited about the opportunity. But I'm guessing it's not just about filling the immediate vacancies you have right now, right?
You're exactly right. One of your sources mentioned this recruitment can also be about proactively building a pipeline of talent for the future. Think about things like internships. That's a classic example of a company identifying and nurturing potential employees who might be a great fit down the line.
That makes sense. It's like an investment in your future workforce. Okay, so we've got recruitment, the initial outreach. Now, how about selection? Where does that fit in?
Selection kicks in after you have that pool of candidates who have expressed interest. It's the process of actually evaluating and choosing the best person from that pool to fill the specific job opening, kind of like sifting through those applications and resumes to find the best fit.
And I imagine that this stage of the process feels quite different for the applicants, wouldn't you say?
It definitely can. As your materials pointed out, selection inherently involves rejecting more applicants than are hired, which can be a difficult experience. So it's important for businesses to handle this stage with, sensitivity and respect for everyone who's taken the time to apply.
Definitely. Always good to keep that in mind.
Hmm.
So just to really clarify, recruitment is about attracting a large number of applicants, while selection focuses on choosing the best fit from that group. Quantity versus quality, in a sense.
Precisely. And both are absolutely vital to the overall hiring process. You need both a strong recruitment effort to draw in talent and a rigorous selection process to ensure you're making the best possible hiring decisions.
Okay, we've got our definitions down. Now for the big question, why should our listeners, business owners, entrepreneurs, anyone really, care about getting recruitment and selection right? What's at stake here?
Well, the simple answer is that your people are your most valuable asset. Having the right employees in place is absolutely essential for any business to thrive, and effective recruitment and selection is how you get there. One source really emphasized this. It's about building that foundation of skilled, motivated, and productive people. And when you have the right people in the right roles, well, the benefits ripple throughout the entire company.
So it's not just about filling empty chairs, it's about finding the people who will actually help you succeed.
Exactly. You see improvements in overall performance and productivity because people who are well suited to their jobs tend to be more engaged and efficient.
Makes sense. The right people in the right roles get more done. What other benefits should we highlight?
Another big one is reduced employee turnover. When people feel like they're in the right job, where their skills are utilized and they align with the company culture, they're far less likely to leave.
Yeah.
And that saves businesses a huge amount of time and money in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. The cost of constantly having to rehire and retrain must be significant.
It really is. And then beyond just the financial side of things, you've got the benefits of building a strong team and fostering a positive work environment. When you bring together people who work well together and who contribute to a supportive and collaborative atmosphere, that's when you start to see that real competitive edge emerging. And diversity is a key piece of that as well, bringing in different perspectives and experiences. Your sources touched on that a fair bit.
And on the flip side, what happens when recruitment and selection are done poorly?
Oh, that can lead to a whole host of problems, for sure. Wasted time and money on a bad hire, poor performance, decreased morale among existing employees, and ultimately having to repeat the whole hiring process all over again. It's a real drain on resources and energy.
Ouch, definitely want to avoid that. All right, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. We'll start with the recruitment process. Your sources identified 4 key stages. Where do we begin?
So the first stage, which might seem obvious, is identifying the job vacancy. But it's more than just recognizing that you need to hire someone.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. What does identifying a vacancy really entail?
It starts with understanding why you need to hire someone. Is it because your business is expanding? Did someone leave the company? Or is it a brand new role you're creating? And this is where job analysis comes in, really understanding the specific tasks, responsibilities, the skills, and the knowledge needed for the role. Like, going beyond just a basic job title and really digging into what the person in that role will actually be doing day to day.
It's like if our bakery in Enfield is hiring a new baker, it's not enough to just say, we need a baker. They need to break down all the specific tasks involved, from mixing the dough to decorating the cakes, and really understand what that person will be responsible for.
Exactly. That clear understanding of the job's demands is crucial. Without it, it's going to be incredibly difficult to find the right person who can step in and actually succeed.
So, job analysis. Step one. What comes next?
Step 2 is all about creating two very important documents: the job description and the person specification. Think of these as like the blueprints for your ideal candidate.
Two sides of the same coin, so to speak. So, what does the job description actually outline?
It essentially lays out the what of the job. The specific tasks, duties, and responsibilities that come with the role. It paints a clear picture for potential candidates of what they'd be doing day to day. So you've got things like the official job title, a brief summary of the role's purpose, a list of the main responsibilities, who the person reports to, and where the job is located. Especially important for our Enfield bakery because they're opening a new shop, right? So candidates will need to know where they'd be working.
Makes sense. So, the job description tells you what you'll be doing. What about the person specification?
The person specification focuses more on the who you're looking for. So it outlines the skills, qualifications, experience, and even personality traits that the ideal candidate would have. Often, businesses will divide these into essential criteria, the must-haves and desirable criteria, those things that would be nice but aren't absolutely essential. And both of these documents, the job description and the person specification, act kind of like a magnet. They help attract those who are genuinely a good fit and maybe deter those who aren't.
I can see how that would save everyone a lot of time and hassle in the long run. So, we've got our job description and person specification all set. Now it's time to actually let people know about the opportunity. That brings us to step 3, right? Advertising the job.
That's it. And this is where businesses have a lot of options these days. They can advertise internally, letting their current employees know about the opening. Maybe there's someone within the company who's ready for a new challenge.
I like that, promoting from within. Good for morale.
It is. But of course, businesses often need to look externally as well. And online job boards are a huge part of that. They have such a wide reach, and you can target specific skills and experience levels.
But I imagine you also get a lot of, let's say, not so qualified applicants that way.
That can definitely happen.
Yeah.
And online job boards can be quite expensive as well.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a trade-off. Now, another big one these days is social media. It's a great way to reach a diverse audience, and you can really showcase your company culture and what it's like to work there.
I see that all the time, companies posting about their team events and their values. It definitely helps them stand out.
It does. But social media recruitment also has its downsides. Managing a high volume of applications, making sure you're targeting the right people, and keeping your content fresh and engaging takes time and effort.
So it's not just a matter of posting a job and waiting for the perfect candidate to magically appear.
Not quite.
Yeah.
Now, another option, especially for more specialized roles, is using recruitment agencies. They have their own networks of candidates and expertise in sourcing and screening.
So you're essentially paying for their expertise and their connections.
Exactly. It can save businesses a lot of time and resources, especially if they're looking for someone with very specific skills. But agencies do come at a cost, and they might not always have a deep understanding of the company's unique culture.
Gotcha. So when it comes to advertising, there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Absolutely. The best approach really depends on who you're trying to reach, where they're likely to be looking for jobs, and what your budget allows. For our bakery in Enfield, it might make sense to advertise locally, in community newspapers or on local job boards. But if they're looking for a head pastry chef with years of experience, they might need to cast a wider net.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've advertised the position, and hopefully the applications are starting to roll in. Now what?
That brings us to the final stage of recruitment, shortlisting. It's all about carefully reviewing the applications and selecting the most promising candidates to move forward to the next phase, which is selection.
So we're starting to narrow down the field.
Exactly. You're comparing the information in each application against the essential and desirable criteria that you outlined in the person specification. It's about focusing your resources on the candidates who seem to have the strongest potential to actually succeed in the role.
All right, we've shortlisted our top candidates. Now it's on to selection, the process of actually choosing the best person for the job. What's the first step in that phase?
The first step is usually another round of application and CV review, but this time it's much more in-depth. During shortlisting, you were mainly checking if candidates met the minimum requirements. Now you're looking for more specific evidence of their skills and experience.
So it's like zooming in on the details.
Exactly. You might be looking for specific achievements, a certain level of experience in a key area, or demonstrable results from their previous roles. And this is where technology can sometimes come in handy. There are tools that can scan applications for specific keywords or qualifications. But even with these tools, it's super important to be mindful of potential biases. Making sure you're not overlooking great candidates based on factors that don't actually relate to their ability to do the job.
Fairness and objectivity are key, right?
Absolutely. Now, step two in selection is usually the part everyone thinks of first, the interview. It's a chance to meet candidates face-to-face, either in person or virtually, and really get a sense of their personality, their communication skills, and how they think on their feet.
And I imagine there are different types of interviews businesses can use depending on the role and the company culture.
Definitely. You've got one-on-one interviews where the candidate meets with just the hiring manager, and panel interviews where they meet with a group of people. And one thing your sources emphasized was the importance of structured interviews. That is, asking every candidate the same set of questions. It helped ensure fairness and allows for a more direct comparison of responses.
So no playing favorites or going off on tangents.
Exactly. And interviews are about more than just confirming what's on a resume. It's about seeing how people interact, how they handle pressure, and whether their personality would be a good fit for the team.
Makes sense. Now, step 3 involves using different types of tests. Can you talk about those?
Absolutely. Businesses often use tests to objectively assess specific skills and abilities. You've got aptitude tests, which measure things like numerical reasoning or verbal reasoning. These are good for gauging someone's potential to learn new things or solve problems.
So it's not just about what they already know, but how quickly they can pick up new information.
Exactly. Then there are psychometric tests, which focus more on personality traits, work style, and values. These can give you insights into how someone might behave in certain situations or how well they'd fit into your company culture. And the good thing about these tests is that they provide a standardized way to compare candidates. It helps take some of the subjectivity out of the process.
So it's not just based on gut feeling, you've got some data to back up your decisions.
Exactly. Now, the final step in selection, which is usually reserved for more senior roles, is the assessment center.
This sounds pretty intense.
It can be. Basically, candidates are put through a series of activities and exercises, often over one or more full days. Things like group discussions, presentations, role-playing scenarios, and case studies.
So you're really putting them through their paces.
You are. The idea is to simulate real work scenarios and see how candidates perform under pressure. It's a more comprehensive way to evaluate their skills and get a sense of how they might actually behave in the role.
So if you're hiring for, say, a management position, you might have candidates lead a mock team meeting or present a business plan.
Exactly. It gives you a much more realistic preview of their capabilities. Now, we've talked a lot about job descriptions and person specifications throughout this deep dive, and your sources really stressed how important they are to the entire recruitment and selection process. I think it's worth digging into why that is.
I agree. They seem to play a role in almost every stage. So let's start with how they help attract the right candidates in the first place.
Well, a good job description clearly outlines the responsibilities, tasks, and duties of the role. So potential candidates can actually understand what the job entails and decide if it's something they're genuinely interested in and qualified for. And the person's specification goes a step further by outlining the specific skills, experience, and qualities you're looking for. It's like giving candidates a checklist to see if they tick the right boxes before they even apply.
So it helps filter out those who aren't a good fit right from the start.
Exactly. And that saves everyone time and effort in the long run. Now, another key benefit of these documents is that they help ensure fairness throughout the process.
How so?
Well, by focusing on job-related criteria, you're minimizing the potential for bias or discrimination. You're evaluating everyone based on the same set of standards, the skills and experience that are actually needed to do the job well. It creates a level playing field and helps you make more objective decisions.
And that's good for both the business and the candidates, right?
Absolutely. And on top of that, a well-written job description can be really helpful for crafting effective job advertisements, setting clear expectations for new employees, and even for performance management down the line. So they're really valuable documents to invest time in getting right.
Sounds like it. Now, shifting gears a bit, we need to talk about legal and ethical considerations, especially for businesses operating in Enfield or anywhere in the UK for that matter.
You're right. UK employment law has a lot to say about recruitment and selection, and businesses need to be very aware of their obligations. A big one, of course, is avoiding discrimination. You can't discriminate against applicants based on things like age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership status, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, or sexual orientation. It's unlawful and unethical.
So those factors should never play a role in hiring decisions.
Absolutely. And this applies to every stage of the process, from how you write your job descriptions to who you ultimately choose to hire. You need to be using objective job-related criteria throughout.
So what are some practical steps businesses can take to ensure they're complying with the law and acting ethically?
Well, first and foremost, your job descriptions and person specifications should be focused solely on the genuine requirements of the job. Avoid anything that could be interpreted as discriminatory, even unintentionally. And during shortlisting and selection, be consistent in how you apply those criteria. Treat all applicants with fairness and respect, and make sure your decisions are based on merit, not on anything else.
It's about creating a level playing field and judging people based on their abilities, not on their personal characteristics.
Exactly. And beyond discrimination, there are other employment laws to consider, like data protection and how you advertise job vacancies. You need to make sure you're handling people's personal information responsibly and that your job advertisements are clear and accurate. It's really about understanding your legal obligations, making sure you're operating within the law at all times.
Good advice for any business, regardless of where they're located. Now, even when businesses are trying to do everything right, recruitment and selection can still be pretty challenging. Your sources mentioned a few common hurdles that come up. What are some of those?
Yeah, there are definitely some recurring challenges. One is simply attracting enough qualified candidates. Especially in competitive markets or for specialized roles, it can be really tough to find people with the right skills and experience.
So it's not always a case of just posting a job and waiting for the applications to flood in.
Not always. And even when you do get a lot of applications, managing that volume can be a real headache. Reviewing all those resumes, scheduling interviews, keeping track of everything, it's time-consuming and can be overwhelming, especially for smaller businesses.
I imagine technology can help with that to some extent.
It can, but even with technology, you still need people to manage the process and make those final decisions. And speaking of decisions, another challenge is avoiding unconscious bias. We all have biases, and they can creep into the hiring process without us even realizing it.
Yeah.
So it takes active effort to recognize and mitigate those biases to ensure everyone is getting a fair shot.
We touched on that earlier, but it's definitely worth repeating. What other challenges should we mention?
Well, there's also the challenge of predicting future performance. Trying to determine, based on a resume and an interview, how someone will actually perform in the role and how well they'll fit into the team. It's not an exact science, and sometimes you just don't know for sure until they're actually in the job.
So how can businesses overcome these challenges and improve their chances of hiring the right people?
The good news is that there are a lot of proven best practices that can make a real difference. One of the most important is having a clear recruitment strategy. Planning out the process, setting goals, and determining the best ways to reach your target audience.
So it's not just about winging it, you need a plan.
Definitely. And of course, those job descriptions and person specifications we talked about earlier are crucial. They lay the foundation for everything else. And when it comes to advertising, it's often best to use a mix of methods to reach a wider pool of candidates.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And once you start receiving applications, having a structured selection process is key. Use predefined criteria to evaluate candidates, make sure your interviews are well structured, and consider using test and assessment centers where appropriate. It's about having a consistent and fair approach that allows you to compare candidates objectively.
So no snap judgments or gut feelings.
Nope. And don't forget about the candidate experience. Treat people well throughout the process. Even if they're not ultimately offered the job, you want them to walk away with a positive impression of your company.
It's all about building a good reputation,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And last but not least, Be open to feedback and constantly evaluate your processes. See what's working, what's not, and make adjustments as needed. Recruitment and selection are always evolving, so it's important to stay flexible and adapt to the changing landscape.
So it's an ongoing process of learning and improvement.
Definitely. Now, your sources included a really helpful list of FAQs about recruitment and selection. Do you want to go through those quickly?
Yes, I think that would be really helpful for our listeners. Let's start with the most basic question. What's the difference between recruitment and selection?
So, recruitment is about attracting potential candidates, while selection is about choosing the best one from that pool. One is about quantity, the other is about quality,
And why is it so important to have a well-defined job description?
because it gives potential candidates a clear understanding of what the job entails and helps them decide if it's a good fit for them. It also helps the business attract the right kind of applicants and set clear expectations from the start.
And what are some of the most common ways to advertise job openings?
Internal recruitment, online job boards, social media, recruitment agencies, those are some of the most popular methods. Each has its own pros and cons, so it's about choosing the right mix for your specific needs.
And what about selection methods? What are some of the approaches businesses use?
Reviewing applications and CVs, conducting interviews, using aptitude and psychometric tests and assessment centers, those are some of the common ones. Again, it depends on the role and the company's preferences.
Now, for a quick definition, what is a person's specification?
It's a document that outlines the ideal candidate's skills, qualifications, experience, and personal qualities. It helps the business focus its search and ensures that everyone is being evaluated against the same criteria.
And why is fairness so important throughout the entire process?
Fairness is crucial to avoid discrimination, to ensure that you're hiring based on merit, and to build a positive reputation as an employer. It's about doing the right thing and creating a level playing field for everyone.
What about internal recruitment? What does that mean?
It means filling vacancies with people who are already working for the company, either through promotions or transfers. It can be a great way to boost morale and retain valuable employees.
And lastly, can you quickly outline the typical stages of the recruitment process?
Sure. It usually starts with identifying the vacancy, then creating the job description and person specification, advertising the job, and finally, shortlisting the most promising candidates.
Fantastic. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. As we wrap up, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing is to understand the distinction between recruitment and selection, and to recognize that both are equally important for building a successful team. Take the time to plan your approach, be clear about what you're looking for, be fair and objective throughout the process, and always be mindful of legal and ethical considerations.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, for a final thought, we've talked a lot about the traditional ways of recruiting and selecting employees. But the world is changing rapidly, isn't it? With technology evolving at an incredible pace, it makes you wonder how things like AI and automation will impact these processes in the future. Something to think about as we navigate this ever-changing landscape of work. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.